Real briefly, yes, I'm the Peru director. We have a team here of Rainforest Foundation US staff. And I always have to say this, so there's Rainforest Foundation Norway, there's Rainforest Foundation UK. We are share the same mission and vision. However, we are independent organizations, and so we collaborate, but are distinct. Another thing to note about Rainforest Foundation US, who do not, those of you not aware of us, we're not a conventional kind of nonprofit or NGO implementer. We're kind of half foundation with our own discretionary funds, but we also implement projects. For example, working with Prevenir in Peru at the moment, this year, hopefully next, on similar community monitoring issues. But that gives us the flexibility to be creative and kind of engage in the study, which we did here, which nobody wanted to offer to support, and come up with these kind of new innovative ideas based on this evidence. And our main mission of all the rainforests, including Rainforest Foundation US, is one, indigenous, territorial, and human rights across not just the Amazon, but the entire world, from Indonesia to Papua New Guinea to the Congo Basin, Mesoamerica as well, and then conservation, hence the name Rainforest Foundation. So we're looking to, I'm not have to tell anybody here how urgent it is to mitigate the climate crisis and how important forests are. So I'll leave that out, but often we do have to explain that, and how key indigenous communities are in that effort. Next slide, please.
That one? Can you see it?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I'm here to talk about the study. So EGAP stands for Evidence and Governance and Politics. It was a 6-country study funded initially by DFID, from the UK, what we were looking to do was, and Peru is one component of those studies, and I'll share in the chat the study, which I forgot to add here, but I did pull it up before, just if you want to glance at it. And I'm going to try to go through a lot quickly. So of course, anything here, please do not hesitate to follow up with me, but I just put the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences study on our work, which was published in just 2 months ago in July of 2021, after about a year and a half of planning, 2 years of implementation, and then a year plus of editing. And that was carried out the study was, the actual design and study was carried out by Columbia University, based in New York City, by political statisticians there. And then the actual implementation was a partnership of the Rainforest Foundation US, ourselves, ORPIO, which is the Indigenous Peruvian organization of Loreto, and with also support from the World Resources Institute, Global Forest Watch. So those are the 4 main actors in the study. And then of course, all the communities we worked with, we randomly selected 36 communities out of about, well, started out with 119. We had to take out a few, but just to take a step back, the reason we did an RCT, okay. So Rainforest Foundation has been working with, trying to get satellite tools and other technology into the hands of communities to put to use since about 2015, as this satellite imagery from tools like Global Forest Watch, which kind of inspired us, and then the adaptation of new smartphone apps that were publicly available. I know there's a lot now, but back then in 2014-15, there weren't many that allowed you to work offline and map and incorporate maps into the phone, take points that are georeferenced, and then convert those into reports. Now there are several, which is great. But when we first kind of came up with this idea, there weren't many. The first one we used was Locust Pro. And we have seen over the years, especially studies published, since the COP, what would that have been, 20 or 14 in Lima here, And then in Paris, papers came out showing that indigenous communities on the whole, when they have territorial rights, conserve rainforest in a greater proportion than, say, other land categorizations. There's a growing body of evidence that and compelling that demonstrates that. However, what we saw missing were a couple things. One is basically how do they conserve this their territory? I mean, this is satellite analysis. So are these people that are, or communities with the common pool resource that are merely watching their trees grow and they're safe anyway, or is it an active engagement to conserve what we see are increasingly threatened resources? And we base the study on that hypothesis that it takes proactive action. The other key component to add about why we did the study is in two communities which are not exactly in the study area, but in similar zone in Ucayali, that when we tested providing satellite imagery with early alerts of deforestation to communities, that they actively then responded to those deforestation alerts. In fact, we saw that it helped them manage their territory. In the two communities where we kind of piloted this model in 2015 and 16, which were Pacha Nueva and Nueva Sapasoa on the border of Sierra de Visora National Park in Peru, they had a baseline deforestation rate of about 8% a year, which is obviously horrible. And within 1 year, they had no satellite alerts. And so we thought that perhaps we're onto something. But going back to the first thing I mentioned, that what's the correlation between land rights and conservation? And then also when I talked to my friends at Columbia University about that, they said, well, that's great. You have a great story with two communities. But if you want to make people listen, you have to do an RCT, a random controlled trial, in order to definitively prove academically that this, as we know, the gold standard of research really, that this is a way forward to conserve rainforests and improve governance. So we engaged with Orpeo, which is the indigenous organization of IDASEP in Loreto, who captured the concept of an RCT quite quickly. And we co-implemented in randomly selected communities and co-implemented this monitoring based on satellite data project, which I'll explain a little bit before or later, sorry. And then further down on my presentation, now that the study's out and we're looking at new ways to take the best practices from what we saw during the what we call the EGAP, during the RCT trial period, then apply those in other parts of Peru and region-wide, and to reduce deforestation, improve governance, and empower communities. And I'll get to that in a moment. Next slide, please. Okay, just briefly kind of how we work, and we have many graphics that show similar things, but basically the concept is, which was discussed a bit yesterday, I mean, there's great satellite information out there. We all know, from my office in Lima, or from sitting in Denver, or someone's in New York or Europe, or it doesn't matter, you can see where deforestation is occurring, right? With all these new tools. The point is, what good does that do if it's not acted upon? You can see all the roads being built, the coca growing, the logging, the mining, the land clearing in Brazil, for example. But really the frontline actors need to have this information to do something about it. And that was kind of our mission since the beginning, was, and most indigenous communities where we work don't have consistent, or if at all, internet access. So it really helps them to get the information. Then they captured, overall adapted the concept of satellite alerts of deforestation very rapidly, without exception. And also the adaptation of those alerts into the phones. So we bring out a physical map and we incorporate the alerts into smartphone apps that they carry around. And then they can verify what is the cause of the alert. anyway, that starts, we see the one, starts with the information going into an office in a city. And then we kind of the role of Rainforest Foundation here in number 2, and with also we trained Orpeo, the Indigenous organization, to have they have an Indigenous technology hub now. So they themselves can analyze the data, take out the relevant data for community by community, where the deforestation alerts are. And then that has to be delivered to the communities. And of course, those of you know Peru, maybe most people here do. It's especially Loreto is a vast area with very little infrastructure connectivity. So we have to deliver the information to communities so they know what's going on. And one challenge of common pool resource management, among many, but one in particular is it's a large area with maybe a small group of families. It could be between 3,000 and 20,000 up to maybe 50,000, 70,000 hectares, which is very challenging to manage that. Like, you wouldn't know what's going on all the time in each part of your community. But these alerts, the early deforestation alerts provided by WWF, for example, really help communities efficiently know where a disturbance might be occurring and to efficiently respond to that. And rather than carrying out like a random patrol over an area that they don't have the resources to patrol, and it would be logistically impossible really to know what's going on everywhere. So the adaptation and capture of the satellite information and then the technology to convert that into something like usable, a report that says this happened here on this day, and here's a photo of it. And also the communities are the best allies. We were talking about citizen science, often like they're the ones that will know often the cause of it, who's responsible for that deforestation. You won't know that if you're not from the area. And the other obvious thing in the countries where severe works is that there's not enough law enforcement to cover, these entire areas, like these vast Amazon areas, like in Colombia, Peru, Guyana, Brazil, of course. So we were looking to form a collaboration of civil society and law enforcement. And then it really helps, the environmental prosecutors, for example, to see that, look, here's a real deforestation event with a photo, time-stamped, location. And then that converted into like a denuncia, a complaint that they can act upon. And it makes, like we've gotten the feedback over the years, it makes their work far easier. And we collaboratively carried out many interventions with the environmental prosecutors over the last 5 years, and that continues to this day. And that represents 4. However, just one last thing for 3 is the verification of the deforestation alerts. One challenge with deforestation alerts, it tells you something happened, but not exactly what, and what is the attribution or who's behind the event. So with drones, the smartphones, and the apps that are incorporated into those, we train community monitors and communities to carry this out on the, and they know their territory. And if you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, this is just one of thousands of photos we have of communities out working in the field. And you can see here, they're using the maps, they're using the smartphones. Also was great about having the communities out there and equipped with knowledge of what's legal and what's not, and patrolling their territory with technology, is often they find things that don't show up on the satellite deforestation alerts, such as selective illegal logging, which is a common problem in the far to right. Those were things that were encountered in the process of seeking out the attribution of other deforestation alerts. Throughout the course of the study, we trained 120 community monitors in 36 participating communities. And then we also had Indigenous trainers who, because rainforest isn't that big, So, we can't be everywhere all the time either, just like the government can't. So we basically equipped trainers and Indigenous coordinators with kind of troubleshooting capacity to help if there was a glitch in the app, or the drone wasn't starting because it needed to be sorted out, that they that they would be there to support that. And that's kind of our model moving up, is a horizontal Indigenous trainer to trainer model, so that more and more communities can be trained and adapt these tools, and the demand is high. Everybody wants it. And over the study period, for example, 1,500 satellite, or sorry, 15,000, my bad, satellite alerts were detected and verified by trainers in these 36 communities. So it's an immense database. I think someone yesterday talked about the the data and the security of the data. All the data in this case goes directly to Orpeo, the Indigenous organization. We don't even see it until they do. And then they decide, first the community makes a decision after they see it, so respecting the Indigenous governance structure. The ultimate community authority is the community assembly. They look at the data first, and often they can deal with the illegality. Like, let's say one of these photos is maybe somebody from, like, maybe the calls coming from inside the house, as they say, and they can stomp that out up front. In other cases, they need, if it's say invaders, or like loggers or coca growers or miners, all very common problems in Peru and across South America, to engage the government authorities with that information in order to facilitate intervention and get them out of the area. But yeah, the monitors took very good data, and they continue to. And like I said, there's 15,000 points and growing. Next slide, please. So this is just for reference. What I'm going to show further on is basically what can we do with this data, or with these results. Maybe next slide is better. Thank you. Yeah. So just to get back to the results, so on the right side here, these are what with the Columbia University third-party analysis found in the RCT versus communities that were treatment, meaning that they engaged in the community monitoring with technology and satellite data, versus the neighboring communities, because it was all RCTs, if you recall, that did not. And communities with existing high rates of deforestation over an average of a 5-year period prior to our engagement had a relative 83% reduction in annual deforestation. And then in what they call, and this is relatively low severity, and this is over the average of all the communities, a 52% reduction in annual deforestation treatment versus control, which is in the study. This data is. And then some of the communities that in the area, in the study area, didn't have deforestation before, and therefore it's hard to measure a lot of impact that we had with them, because, like, especially by the border of Ecuador, is for now one of the more safe areas. That might change, but so the results are going to be less, pronounced when you have that kind of a situation. And there was a dip in the difference year 1 and year 2, which the first year was the most dramatic difference. We only did 2 years. The study period was 2 years. And I think that, well, there's a few hypotheses for that. One, the FEMA was already going out to the community, like based on community demands. The environmental prosecutors were reaching communities, and that could have had kind of an effecto global, as we say, or a dissuasive effect on the entire area, to know that any community is not, playing around anymore. They will call the authorities. And then, of course, just like anything, you're gonna, like, if you walk into an extremely filthy kitchen, you clean it one day, your impact of that is going to be bigger that first day than maybe the second day of cleaning. Analysis I use, but there's many others. However, we feel strongly that these results are concrete and applicable across the board in similar contexts. Next slide, please. Okay, just real quick, this is the EGAP area, which I mentioned before. And just you can see the different deforestation rates in the different areas. The study area is interesting because I think it's representative of a lot of parts of the Amazon basin. The tri-border area by Leticia is very intense, high deforestation rates, and a lot more impact. Also the Medio Napo kind of moving up to the northwest of the map. And then up by the border of Ecuador, it was, that's very hard to reach, and there wasn't for now. And so there wasn't a lot happening as far as deforestation before and not during the study either. Next, please. So then we basically applied that range of deforestation across all indigenous territories in the entire Amazon, which you can see here. And like if you look at the big picture of indigenous territories, it tells you something, especially like Brazilian indigenous collective territories are massive. So it's doesn't really tell the whole story, but you can see different trends and rates of deforestation across the board in different regions using the same. Well, you can see the deforestation rates 5-year in different color coding in the grid below. Next slide, please. For more detail, that's why we broke for kind of looking at the scale up is like a big area such as this is the Yanomami area. We broke like large areas into 2,800 meter cells or hectare cells, which is the average of about the average of an EGAP community, it's about 3,000 hectares, to kind of break down what's going on within a territory and where would monitoring with satellite information be most effective within those areas. Next, please. And then, oh, I mixed these up, but yeah, just to add, we have high severity, low severity. And then one other thing to note, some of the areas where it says it's in black, above range, that is where deforestation is so intense that we calculate, 11% deforestation rate, that our kind of program, the information to action Rainforest Alert would potentially not have a positive impact, like where the investment would not have a return. And then there's high severity and low severity, like the red and the orange, like in EGAP, where we feel you would definitely have this positive result, or not definitely, but we hypothesize that you would, as there are similar areas to what was studied in the PNAS report. Okay, next, please. And then, yeah, this is one I meant. So like, look, even within a territory, it's complicated, especially a large collective territory. You have areas that are on the fronts of deforestation, areas that are maybe pretty isolated for now. And then, but if you can see tendencies, near rivers, near the edge of the territory, there's more chance of deforestation. So this helps to consider where monitoring with technology, or where the information action or whatever would be most impactful short term. And I would argue help keep those kind of lighter green, lime green areas safe longer. So it's necessary when one, whether it's Rainforest or anybody else, is making the monitoring plan to look at the dynamics of the entire territory, and then what trends and where is investment in time and then resources. And like if a community can't control this whole area, which is hundreds of thousands of hectares, where should they focus their efforts? So that's one thing that we've been looking into and are looking into. Next slide, please. And then if you look at the EGAF area, compared to that, you can see that there's a lot of red and yellow. And that's where we saw exactly these impacts where they happened, where there was some deforestation and it was relatively halted, and where there was more severe deforestation and that was higher relative impact than areas where probably nothing happened before and we're not sure if the patrolling did anything or not. That's only over a 2-year period. I would argue scaling up these kind of programs should look at least a 10-year horizon, because we've seen a lot of, most people here have been out in the field and know the game, that just because something's fine 1 year doesn't mean it will be in 5 or 10 years. I mean, look at Monitoreo, for example, among others. And so it's, I think, critical to look at the fronts of deforestation access points for large scale use of systems where you put information into the hands of indigenous communities. Next, please. And anyway, if you applied this with the results of the EGAP study to all the indigenous territories, it's the same map from RISE that was before. And these are over 10 years, the amount of hectares that you could justifiably or defensively save using the system versus business as usual. And I'm happy to discuss how our methodology for these numbers and later with anyone individually, but I know I have to move on with the presentation. So please contact me to look into this further, anyone who is interested. Next, please.
Yeah, Tom, we need to wrap up soon.
Okay, yep, okay, I'll go one. Could you just go 1, 2 to the last slide? Okay, just and to wrap up, we would like the interest here is to scale this up and to find partners of all these different categories. And obviously with indigenous organizations, that'd be the base of the work, other nonprofits, law enforcement, academia, and then obviously policymakers and donors, because we feel this is necessary, and it should be more in policy, and then 2, it needs funding, but it's actually the cheapest and most efficient way to save the rainforest with indigenous territories. Our costs were very low per hectare conserved over the study period. I guess I'm out of time, so I'll wrap it up there. Thank you, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Tom, and sorry for rushing you. Thanks so much for that presentation, Tom. I have some questions, but first, Jose Sanchez, he wanted to know, remind us how you resolve the connectivity issue, the internet connectivity issue in the remote areas. And please keep your camera on. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
We never did resolve the connectivity issue in the communities. I mean, that's beyond our realm to install that infrastructure. As far as how we worked around it, basically we had to deliver the satellite information by hand to the communities and then collect their results by hand. And that's where the network of indigenous communities who would collect the information every week or 2 of what the monitors had found, and then deliver the new deforestation alerts to the monitors. And that was a large component of the cost incurred by the program. So it worked, but it worked a little bit expensively just because we had to hand deliver the information and then collect it by hand.
So just a follow-up question, Tom. But was it that sometimes it did work and sometimes it didn't, or you had communities where definitely you always had to do this manual collection and delivery of information?
Really, only maybe 1 or 2 of the 36 communities had a reliable internet connection. So it was overwhelmingly done by hand or manually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A big challenge.
So can you remind me when the indigenous communities had the cell phones and the system working, the app provided them with the interface to contribute with their alerts, right?
That's right.
Okay. So perhaps at some point, not today, obviously, but it would be great to see that working. I think that would be.
There's a few apps that do that. The one we use is called Locus Locus Mapper, like the map locus. And I don't even think they know we exist. It's a free open source app that's based in Switzerland, but the communities love it. And you can put your own maps into that app and it works very well offline. I know there's several others apps out there. And you know, really we don't have our own app, and really from our perspective, we don't care what the communities use. We just want things that people buy into. What would they actually use? So if the communities like that app, great. If they like Global Forest Watcher, we encourage anything that people use and it's reliable offline.
Okay, great. Is there anybody who has a question before we move on? Tom, please stay online for the next presentations, right? Because they are dealing with the same topic, and I would very much appreciate your interaction with these presenters. I start to introduce very quickly, y voy a pasar nuevamente al español, a Felipe Spina Avino, que trabaja con el programa AIRR y es lidera el tema de tecnología de conservación y es un asesor en el monitoreo con y para pueblos indígenas de WWF en Brasil. Felipe, mucho gusto. Tú nos vas a hablar justamente de otro ejemplo del proyecto de monitoreo comunitario. Pero realmente antes que haces tu presentación, te puedo preguntar tu reacción al estudio que acabamos de escuchar. ¿Ustedes se conocen, están interactuando o eso es nuevo para ti y tu equipo? Gracias, Felipe. Adelante.
Gracias. No, es muy interesante el estudio que Tom presenta. Claro que ya lo conocemos porque es una gran referencia. E incluso porque muchas veces hacemos el trabajo, pero no tenemos tiempo y dedicación para hacer también las publicaciones científicas, que también son importantes para comprobar el efecto de nuestras acciones. E incluso, como van a mirar, nuestro proyecto sigue una lógica muy similar. ¿Sigo entonces, Simone, con la presentación?
Sí, Felipe.
Gracias. Entonces ahí, por favor, ¿puede volver uno más? Sí, gracias. Entonces soy Felipe Spina de WWF, trabajo en WWF Brasil con el tema de tecnología, pero también en otros países por AIRR y otros proyectos de WWF. Es un gusto y colaborar con esa importante iniciativa de servir a Amazonia y compartir con ustedes acerca de monitoreo participativo indígena con tecnología para conservación en incidencia, en especial un poco del proyecto Amazonia Indígena Derechos y Recursos. Por favor, los siguientes. Hoy, desafortunadamente, no voy a tener mucho tiempo para hablar de los detalles del proyecto Amazonia Indígena Derechos y Recursos, pues quiero hablar más de nuestras actividades de monitoreo. Pero somos financiados por USAID y trabajamos ahí en 4 países, con las motivaciones y propósitos descritos ahí en la diapositiva. En realidad somos muchos, somos cerca de 20 socios, siendo que 13 son organizaciones indígenas 7 son organizaciones no gubernamentales. Ahí pueden mirar un poco los socios a la derecha. Por favor, lo próximo, Simón. Trabajamos ahí con distintas organizaciones indígenas en nivel regional, nacional y subnacional, y también con comunidades directamente que están ahí a monitorar sus territorios. El proyecto busca dar un papel preponderante a las organizaciones indígenas en la toma de decisión. Y tenemos ahí un sistema de distintos comités para que la toma de decisión ocurra de manera participativa e inclusiva. También hay una preocupación con los temas de género y juventud. Estamos ahí finalizando un plan de género y juventud para garantizar una mirada y acciones más inclusivas por parte del proyecto y sus socios. Y no sé lo que pasó, pero está un poco malos sus logotipos, pero espero que en lo próximo esté mejor. Próximo, por favor, Simón. Hoy voy a hablar de las actividades de monitoreo indígena que están conectadas con nuestro primer objetivo que está ahí arriba, en especial con el componente de tomada de decisiones por datos recolectados por sistemas de monitoreo indígena que estén en operación en la Amazonía y articuladas entre sí también. Pero el proyecto tiene también otros componentes muy importantes de generación de capacidades, de incidencia, de capacidad política, capacidad de paralegal, y una serie de otras capacidades. También fomento a emprendimientos indígenas de desarrollo sostenible, intentando allí aumentar la capacidad de negociación de las organizaciones indígenas para lograr resultados equitativos. Próximo slide, por favor. Trabajamos en Brasil, Colombia, Ecuador y Perú, en los paisajes de Putumayo, Maranhão y Tapajós, con cerca de 30 monitores indígenas que están involucrados en acciones de monitoreo junto a sus organizaciones indígenas locales, en distintas acciones de monitoreo que hacen seguimientos sobre los impactos a la biodiversidad, los servicios ecosistémicos, y los aspectos sociales y culturales, y las amenazas a esos territorios indígenas y de manera local. Próximo. Tenemos un componente muy importante junto a COICA, la coordinadora de las organizaciones indígenas de la cuenca amazónica, que es el fortalecimiento del sistema conocido como SAT-RR, el sistema de alerta temprano de respuesta rápida sobre amenazas a territorios indígenas de COICA, que incluye también una articulación con otros sistemas de monitoreo indígena y la gobernanza entre los distintos niveles de monitoreo. Trabajamos entonces en especial con COICA, con FENIAI, AIDESEP, OPIAC y COIAVE en sus respectivos países, para garantizar entonces que las distintas organizaciones estén ahí a tomar datos y colaborar con el monitoreo indígena de manera articulada con COICA, para que la información sea efectivamente usada para apoyo, incidencia y defensa de los territorios indígenas, de las distintas organizaciones indígenas. Pues, como estaba ahí disertón, más importante que monitorar es dar uso también a la información que estemos ahí a recolectar en terreno. Próximo, por favor. Entonces, como mencioné, el objetivo del proyecto es que la toma de decisión se nutra con esos datos recolectados por esos distintos sistemas de monitoreo indígena en operación en la Amazonía, pero que estén articulados entre sí de manera que mejore la participación ciudadana e indígena y a su vez influencien el diseño de políticas, programas y proyectos públicos y privados a nivel subnacional, nacional e internacional, aportando ahí evidencias que consigan influenciar las instituciones regulatorias y sancionadoras para temas de denuncia de delitos socioambientales y culturales. Los sistemas de monitoreo son integrales, Entonces, además de aspectos ambientales, incluyen también temas sociales, culturales, e incluso de salud en algunos casos. Y estamos ahí buscando con que sean efectivamente reconocidos y aplicados como herramienta para el control y vigilancia territorial, porque muchas veces esos sistemas, en embora sean muy importantes, no tienen la debida reconocimiento de la validad de otros sistemas, en especial por parte de los gobiernos locales. Entonces esperamos que puedan ahí presentar datos oportunos y cualificados para el proceso de toma de decisiones ahí en torno a los proyectos de infraestructura, extractivismo y las distintas amenazas a sus territorios indígenas. Siguiente, por favor. Voy a hablar un poco acerca de las soluciones tecnológicas en uso. Como Tony estaba a mencionar, hoy tenemos ahí muchos aplicativos de teléfono. En AIRR, por ejemplo, en Brasil, estamos a trabajar con nuestro socio IPAN, que ha desarrollado una aplicación de teléfono móvil llamada sobre. Esta es que pueden mirar ahí a la izquierda, que permite que usuarios indígenas y no indígenas hagan el registro e envío de denuncias de temas como tala ilegal, incendios de infraestructura, además de acompañar alertas de otros sensores y mirar datos históricos de sus territorios. IPAN también ha capacitado grupos indígenas y creado materiales de apoyo para difundir el uso de la herramienta sobre. En otros proyectos, como por ejemplo en Rondônia, en Brasil, tenemos grupos de monitores indígenas que utilizan drones para el registro de actividades ilegales y también para generación de mapas de análisis. Entonces, no solamente sacan fotos, pero los propios indígenas están capacitados a crear los mapas de manera local. Creemos que tecnologías como los drones pueden colaborar incluso para salvaguarda de esos monitores y reducir el riesgo en sus actividades. Pues pueden, por ejemplo, registrar un evento de tala ilegal desde lejos, en mayor seguridad de que confrontar al invasor para hacer un registro de manera local. También utilizan otras aplicaciones de teléfono como Smart Mobile, que permite una configuración y personalización de la información colectada y, al contrario de otras, una gestión autónoma y local de los datos y también una generación de análisis de reportes de manera automatizada y personalizada a nivel local o también articulado a nivel regional. Siguiente, por favor. Por fin voy a hablar un poco más de nuestro trabajo en Rondônia, que este no es de Proyecto AIRR, pero también es de WWF. Trabajamos con nuestro socio Canindé y distintas otras organizaciones locales, en este caso financiados por la Fundación MUR, para fortalecer la vigilancia y el monitoramiento de tierras indígenas con tecnología y aumentar su protección y capacidad de incidencia de nuestros socios. En este caso, utilizamos distintas tecnologías en simultáneo. Tenemos ahí a derecha, arriba, un componente de monitoreo e inteligencia geoespacial en que utilizamos datos públicos de sensores como Landsat, Planet y Sentinel, incluso datos de radares de Sentinel-1, que son trabajados en la plataforma Google Earth Engine para identificar alertas y amenazas que son hechas disponibles en una interfaz amigable a nuestros socios indígenas, que está que también miran ahí a la derecha y en verde y rojo. Esta información genera inteligencia, porque como Tony estaba mencionando, los territorios son muy extensos. Entonces, esta información ayuda para apoyar los grupos de monitores indígenas en terreno que utilizan herramientas como los drones Smart Mobile para validar esas amenazas o incluso registrar nuevas alertas que no han sido diagnosticados en el radar, como el proceso de tala selectiva, que es muy común acá en Brasil. Como algunos colegas ahí mencionaban, un reto frecuente en la Amazonía es la falta de comunicación en muchas áreas de comunidades remotas. En nuestro caso, en Rondônia, estamos adoptando una solución de comunicación digital de bajo costo vía radio VHF, llamada Hermes, en que no realmente permite un acceso a Internet, pero permite que se envíe puntos de GPS, alertas y fotos desde los teléfonos en terreno hasta el núcleo de inteligencia espacial y desde ahí para cualquier otro sistema de Internet. Por fin, toda información que es generada alimenta el núcleo de incidencia institucional que tenemos, que cuenta ahí con apoyo de abogados, de jornalistas, de comunicadores, que encima de la información recibida toman la acción y dan seguimiento o encaminamiento a las denuncias recibidas. Así, la información recolectada es efectivamente usada para apoyo, incidencia y defensa de los territorios indígenas por nuestros socios indígenas locales. Siguiente, por favor. Gracias por la oportunidad. Finalizo ahí compartiendo una reciente publicación acerca del uso de drones para conservación, que está disponible en portugués y en inglés. Desafortunadamente no tenemos en español, pero en portugués pues, ya ayuda mucho porque no tenemos muchas publicaciones así en nuestros idiomas latinos. El enlace está ahí, pero en breve comparto también en el chat. Y creo que puede ser de interés de muchos que nos asisten hoy. Gracias nuevamente a Servir por organizar este evento y por la oportunidad, y estoy disponible ahí a cualquier pregunta que quieran hacer. Gracias por su tiempo.
Gracias, Felipe. Como ayer te digo que tienes que imaginarte el aplauso. De verdad, una presentación muy completa y densa. Yo tengo una pregunta antes, Silvia también tiene una pregunta. ¿Cómo, o sea, yo sé que ahí no es un programa, o sea, tienen como 3 años, ¿cierto? Ahí 2 años o 2 años y medio, y todavía tienen tiempo adelante. ¿Hacia dónde quieren llegar? O sea, esto lo que están haciendo ahora, ¿son pilotos? ¿Están en medio del escalamiento? O sea, ¿cuál es la proyección en la vida del proyecto ahí?
Sí, Simona, lo que pasa es que como muchos de nosotros, por el tema de la pandemia, estamos ahí muy retrasados. Ya debemos estar ahí más avanzados con nuestro cronograma, pero justo estamos empezando con algunos pilotos, unos ya más avanzados, otros no. Y ahora que estamos ahí un poco más tranquilos con la pandemia, estamos consiguiendo avanzar un poco más para hacer los testes. Esperemos en los próximos años ahí sí hacer como la expansión para otros territorios, y también cuando el sistema de COICA va a estar totalmente listo y articulado entre los distintos sistemas de monitoreo indígena.
Y Tom, ¿tú estás todavía en línea? ¿Tienes comentarios frente a esa experiencia que presenta Felipe, o las dos que presenta Felipe?
Realmente tenía una de las mismas preguntas. Es en qué estatus está. Pero ya, de acuerdo. Y lo que no mencioné es que nosotros, la idea es trabajar para escalamiento en lo que estamos ahorita. Vamos a empezar escalamiento próxima semana. En Ucayali, Madre Dios y Loreto, empezando en Perú. Y Rainforest también trabajamos en Brasil y Guyana. Por eso ese foro es interesante ver cómo colaborar, por ejemplo, con Felipe, otros programas para que no hacemos sinergias, ¿ya? Entre los dos, entre varios programas, todos los que corresponden a ese tema de trabajar directamente con comunidades y organizaciones indígenas es precisamente con quien queremos trabajar. Y la idea de Rainforest no es que en ese mapa de escalamiento que presenté, no va a ser Rainforest en todas las zonas, obvio. La idea es buscar un sistema con sacando las mejores prácticas y mejores herramientas de varias zonas y generar una red. Como decía Felipe, con COICA, con quien igual somos socios, sería perfecto para ayudar a generar esta red. Y más allá de eso, es canalizar financiamiento y recursos a estas prácticas que lleguen a la comunidad para que implementen estas prácticas con tecnología ellos mismos. Porque ONGs, políticos, de organizaciones indígenas igual, vienen y vayan, pero las comunidades siguen. Entonces, la manera más sostenible para este sistema de monitoreo comunitario o cualquier nombre, información, acción, solo es posible realmente trabajar directamente con redes de comunidades en las zonas con amenazas. Entonces, veo complementario lo que ha expuesto
Sí, un tema, por ejemplo, que veo, Tom, es que Felipe habló de ese sistema que funciona sin internet y justamente Silvia pregunta que si puedes decir, Felipe, un poquito más acerca de ese sistema de comunicación para el envío de datos sin internet. ¿Nos puedes explicar esto un poquito más?
Sí, sí, claro. Este es un reto muy común en la Amazonía. Muchas de las comunidades tienen este problema. En nuestro caso, acá en Rondônia, pero también en Ecuador, con FENIAI, ha adoptado una solución similar, que tiene ahí también la experiencia de Ecuador, que pueden buscar con FENIAI. Pero estamos utilizando un sistema que se llama Hermes, que incluso compartí ahí en el chat, que significa High Frequency Emergency Rural Multimedia Exchange System. No es propiamente una internet, no se puede ascender a YouTube o a Zoom, pero sirve para enviar datos digitales por medio de radio. En la Amazonía ainda es muy común que las comunidades tengan acceso a radios VHF. Entonces trabajamos ahí con softwares libres, con Arduinos y temas así, de manera que se convierta la información digital desde los teléfonos y se envíe vía radio, como se hacían en los principios de Internet con los modems que hacían mucho ruido. Quien es más viejito aquí se acuerda que cuando se conectaban a Internet se oían muchos sonidos en los modems. Entonces es una tecnología así similar, de que de ese modo se puede compartir puntos de GPS, fotos, textos, planillas, de temas así. Pero no es como una conexión en directo a la Internet. Pero la información, una vez que llega a nuestra base, ahí sí se puede distribuir a la Internet. Y de la misma manera, los alertas de satélite, cuando son recibidos ahí en nuestra base, desde los sensores de la Internet, pueden ser compartidos por ese sistema, y así se evita la etapa que Tom mencionaba de usted tener que elevar manualmente las alertas a las comunidades que están ahí más lejos. Entonces ahí funciona más o menos así. Compartí el link de la organización rizomática que ha desarrollado el sistema Hermes, que está ahí en implantación en Rondônia, en operación también con FENIAI y algunas otras partes de Brasil y de la Amazonia.
Gracias, Felipe. Silvia, espero que se respondió tu inquietud. Y aquí Adriano de Embrapa nos dice que también desarrollaron un sistema CNPTIA para trabajar offline. Muy interesante. Marina tiene una pregunta, Marina Irigoyen, que es nuestra consultora en género. ¿Cómo abordaron o están abordando en AIRR el trabajo con mujeres indígenas y uso de tecnología?
Sí, tanto en AIRR cuanto en nuestro trabajo con otros pueblos indígenas acá en Rondônia, siempre intentamos ahí tener una visión más inclusiva, pero este no es un tema fácil, tampoco en nuestra sociedad, y esto ya está muy bien resolvido. Y ahí lo que hacemos, por ejemplo, en AIRR, estamos dejando un plan de género y juventud, justamente para tener esa mirada más inclusiva. Y en los distintos componentes, como por ejemplo el componente de monitoreo territorial, hacemos ahí, por ejemplo, sesiones de consulta específica con las mujeres para buscar entender lo que es importante desde su punto de vista monitorear, cómo parecen qué papeles que creen que pueden tener en este proceso, y ahí buscar maneras de involucrarlas en este proceso. En Rondônia, por ejemplo, conseguimos muchos logros con algunas comunidades indígenas. Para ser sincero, hay otras que son un poco más complexas debido a temas culturales de sus propias comunidades, pero muchas están muy abiertas a la participación de la mujer. E incluso en Rondônia tenemos ahí la participación de mujeres monitoras en las equipos de vigilancia y monitoreo, e incluso como lideresas de equipos de de monitores de vigilancia se han salido muy bien. Justo regresé de un otro entrenamiento de uso de drones en que había una presencia muy fuerte de mujeres que estaban ahí lidiando muy fácil con la tecnología y se apropiando también de esos roles ligados a cuestión de vigilancia y monitoreo que muchas veces son predominantemente ejecutados más por hombres.
Muy bien, una última pregunta de Marina. Sí, tú hablas de 34 monitores. ¿Estos logran cubrir todas las áreas previstas en el proyecto?
No, no, de manera alguna, eso es apenas en las etapas ahí más iniciales de piloto. Como Tom estaba mencionando, la idea no es que el proyecto por sí solo sea capaz de monitorear toda la Amazonía, pero sí que críe canales para que los distintos sistemas de monitoreo, las distintas aplicaciones estén ahí trabajando de manera articulada entre sí, y principalmente que la información, también como tú mencionaba, esté ahí a cargo de las organizaciones indígenas, que son las mayores interesadas ahí en la gestión y protección de su territorio y que deberían tener el protagonismo en este proceso. Por eso que nosotros estamos a trabajar con COICA y con otros 13 socios indígenas, de manera que no importa quién está haciendo los monitoreos, si es una organización nacional, subnacional, si están a utilizar SOMAI, Global Forest Watch o SMART, pero que estén ahí de manera articulada, contribuyendo para un sistema mayor de monitoreo por parte de COICA y también apoyando para acciones efectivas de incidencia, de presión a nivel internacional cuando sea necesario.
Ok. Bueno, yo tengo una última pregunta. Y qué pena, un momentico se me fue la energía. Si has respondido, pues lo escucharé después, pero en el tema de capacitación, o sea, ¿cuáles son realmente algunas recomendaciones o qué hace que una capacitación funcione o no para que ellos se empoderen y monitoreen?
Simona, creo que en realidad se empieza mucho antes de la capacitación. Por ejemplo, voy a hablar del proceso de Hondoña, en que empezamos mucho antes a trabajar con los indígenas, a discutir primeramente lo que querían monitorear, lo que era importante, y en este caso, como utilizaban Smart Mobile, a configurar los modelos de recolección de datos para dar respuestas a sus necesidades y utilizando la lenguaje que sea accesible para ellos y también temas de iconos que ayudan mucho. La capacitación, cuando hacemos, es predominantemente práctica en terreno, trabajando ahí en situaciones reales para que se ganen práctica en utilizar este tipo de aplicación. Y también involucramos los equipos en las etapas siguientes de análisis de datos y generación de informes para que realmente estén empoderados en todo el proceso y puedan hacer ahí de manera semi-independiente. Y nosotros apenas tenemos un papel más de apoyo técnico en este proceso. Entonces creo que es muy importante ahí también hacer las cosas con una mirada más inclusiva, sin a veces el rigor académico de un taller o algo así, que sean muy simples, de manera muy participativos y muy prácticos juntos a los pueblos indígenas y ahí por ahora estamos ahí consiguiendo lograr buenos resultados.
Muchas gracias, muy, muy amable Felipe. Nuevamente aplausos y felicitaciones a todo el equipo que trabaja en este tema.
Gracias.
Voy a presentar entonces a la tercera experiencia en el tema de pueblos indígenas. Doy la bienvenida a Aline Fensozi, que es una analista geotecnológica en Imaflora. Imaflora es el socio principal de Servir Amazonía en Brasil. Y acabamos de lanzar una aplicación desarrollada en el contexto de Servir Amazonía que se llama Terra on Track. Y Aline nos va a presentar esa herramienta y mostrarnos cómo está enmarcado en un esfuerzo que tiene Imaflora desde hace varios tiempos con una red de emprendedores indígenas para promover negocios sustentables. Entonces, Alina, bienvenida y adelante.
Thank you, Simone. My internet is unstable here, so I will turn off my video. And if you are not hearing me well, please tell me. So, hello, everybody. I work as geoprocessing analyst at Imaflora. And today I will tell you about our experience with citizen and participatory mapping in Terra on Track, that is an app for monitoring social and environmental territories. We are working under the Survey Amazonia umbrella, and the beta version of the app was launched in September 21. Now we are working in improvements already mapped. Sorry, I can pass this slide. Let me solve this.
¿Tú quieres que pasamos los slides? You want us to move the slides?
Please, Simone, if
Yes.
possible,
So
I want.
It's Sophie who's moving the slide. Sophie, can you move the slide, or is Aline presenting right now?
I can, but can you stop sharing, Aline, please? And I will gladly share my screen and share your slides.
Okay.
Here.
Stop share.
Okay, give me just a minute. Set it up. Okay, can you see your slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
please
you, Sophie.
Just let me know when you need me to move the slide. You want to start?
Okay.
Okay.
As I said, the Terra on Track is a tool that can be used in cell phones or any device to facilitate access and visualization of information about degradation of forests. And next, please. And what information we can see in the app. We can see satellite images, deforestation data, and boundary of areas of interest as protected areas and municipalities. Next, please. Here is a dashboard of the app. And we can see a summary results of the alerts and data as deforestation and fire. Next, please. How it works basically, people in the field that find a disturbance can create an alert for local institutions to be aware of this. And sorry, there is a microphone open. Thank you. The app works through a GPS device that points the location, and the user can create an alert informing the coordinates, a description, and photos of the disturbance. It is noted that the alerts are anonymous and any personal information is collected, but the alert must be validated by the local institution to be published. Who created this? We developed the app in cooperation with SIAP, Survey Amazonia, and spatial informatic groups as a service of land cover and land use change and ecosystem areas. And for who we created this, who will use the app? Rural and indigenous communities in Amazon forest. And because of this, I will tell a little bit of the story of how we got here. Imaflora has working with communities in Amazon, mainly in Pará state, for a long time. And the app is one result of this interaction because people brought to us the need to better understand and monitor the threats and land use change of their areas. Brazil has geospatial information about deforestation, but is not easy to access. So the big challenge is putting geospatial information in people's hands through a simple and widely accessible way. As mentioned in yesterday's presentation, a map speaks more than a text and reaches a greater number of people because it is a visual information. And who is the potential use of apps? We and our partners here identified 108 organizations that can use the app in Brazilian Amazon. Next, please. Next, please. Next. I already talked about it. And the first communities where we are training people and testing the tool are in Pará state. One is a group of indigenous women and women of isolated rural communities from the Origins Brasil network. This network connects community producers with the consumer market to boost ethical trade relations and improve value of production that helps keep the forest standing. The territory where Origins Brasil operates counts about 1,900 people, of which about 45% are women that are extractivists, about 660 women, indigenous women, and members of traditional communities known as quilombolas. Another group is rural communities of São Félix do Xingu, a municipality with high deforestation rates in Pará state. This region was colored black in the map of Tom in the first presentation. One example where we are testing the app is an association of women producers of fruit pulp. Next, please. We did 2 trainings with beta version of app and asked the people of the communities to assess the app's usability. The consultation was with these communities, Magari, Tancredo Neves, and PDS Paraíso. And the app was identified by people as a good tool to help monitor and manage their areas. And here we can see some opinions like João Gomes. I will just read for you. João Gomes said, the tool helps in territories defense. It is possible to detail the alerts with data, photos, and location for informing the support and control institutions. Emanuel Batista, that is representative of Casa Familiar Rural in São Félix do Xingu, said, we can look from above how our areas are doing, which speed up the problems resolution and management of the territory. And a view of Selma Gomes de Oliveira, that is coordinator of projects of Imaflora in São Félix do Xingu. And Selma said that communities see themselves as co-responsible in the building information process, and people start to see themselves as part of solution. And communities leaves the pressure of command and control and starts to have autonomy and empowerment in the territory management. Selma brought us some of important topics mentioned by Amanda yesterday that pointed that people must feel like they are part of a team and they are making difference. Well, just to finish, we are in a beta version, so we will make new consultation with other communities and government institutions. And we will include new databases such as Necessary Alerts, GLAD Alerts, and SAR degradation data. One point identified and requested by users as example of another apps presented here is to allow the app run offline because the internet in Amazon is not available in all locations. So to run offline is crucial, or other solutions like Somai. One of communities identified an usability for monitoring productive stocks and product collection. We are thinking how customize the tool to fulfill this need. And finally, the app is a work in progress. So we hope that users help us to find new features and improve the tool for the future. I just like to say I'm glad to be here, hearing about all these experiences as Somai and seeing the results in Peru, because we are just starting this journey and we can enjoy the lessons learned by you to help us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aline, and happy that the internet connection is working enough so we heard you well. I wanted to ask Tom or Felipe, who gave the previous presentations, if you have comments or questions to Aline. No. I do have a question, perhaps Tom Bewick or Felipe, you can intervene afterwards. I have a question which is a bit provocative. Don't take it I don't know, but I wonder why developing a new app when we hear that there are apps that already exist. So what was the rationale to develop a new app, Aline?
I think there is several common functions in Somai and Terra on Track mainly, and we intend to talk with Somai to identify synergies because we think we are working with the same focus here. So the mainly difference is that Terra on Track will be available for all territory of Amazon forest, but we think the functions could be incorporated to work well in both in indigenous territory and another communities too.
And a follow-up question. When you developed the tool, did you involve indigenous communities or leaders in the design of the tool, or did you develop the tool, I mean, knowing well these communities because you already work with them, and then you went to the territories and showed them the tool? How did you involve the users in the design of the tool?
Well, the tool was created because of a demand. And Imaflora works mainly in a region known as Calha Norte in Pará, and we work with several communities under the Origins Brasil network. So people of this community ask us for a tool that help them to monitor their areas. And so we talk a lot with this community, mainly in PDS Paraíso, in Calha Norte, and we are in touch with them because they are talking to us what functions are important or what must be improved. So it is a cooperation with them.
That's very interesting, I think. Erica has a question. Could something like Terra on Track be used in other countries like Venezuela?
Not just yet, Erica. but we intend to talk with another governments to check the interested in the tool. And of course, if we have data available to make this possible, it is a good improvement that we can do.
Good. Tom, yes.
I just, thank you. I just wanted to add, I mean, one thing, and regarding the Venezuela question, one thing that we're looking into, which I didn't have a chance to present on, are the, what we're calling the condiciones habilitantes, the enabling conditions for this kind of system to work. And for example, Venezuela might be difficult. From our analysis, just because you have to have a somewhat of a government infrastructure to respond to these kind of threats and this information. And the communities need to count on that. And there's security issues for the communities as well. So that they need to know that they're, like, one is good governance internally with the communities and the overall indigenous infrastructure. And then second is the ability of the government to respond. For example, in Peru, Colombia, Brazil, our analysis has found that there's far higher probability of response than perhaps a Suriname or Venezuela or Bolivia. And that's a challenge, but it shouldn't be something to impede the idea of what we're all talking about here to go forward, because governments change. Hopefully Venezuela is in a better context, or Bolivia, or wherever that is. And hopefully other places that might have the conditions don't worsen, say. So that's something we should all be taking into account when we implement these kind of projects or consider them. So I add that.
Yeah, Felipe, I see your camera on. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add something. I'll go in English, as everyone is speaking English now. I think it's more important than having applications, as there are quite a few already, is to ensure that they talk with each other. Because there is huge, and as Tom was mentioned, it doesn't matter which application they are using, which is matters that they are using a good application and collecting data in an effective way. And this data is actually becoming something useful, not only data for us to see the disaster that's happening in the Amazon that we already know about it. So I think it's important to ensure that the different initiatives, including Servir, because of its regional dimensions, try to help to create this collaborative environment that doesn't matter what you're using, as far as they're exchanging information, and this is collaborating to a greater good. And ideally, that this information is being managed and dealt by the indigenous communities by themselves, or their organizations like COICA or their regional partners in the Amazon. Thanks.
Yeah, I know we don't have much time for discussion, but I like Sylvia Vidyas's yesterday presented on an effort to pull together different sources of information, and I found it interesting that it was actually a bit difficult once that was done to get really to find the full usage of it. So it's not an easy process. Sydney, you raised your hand, and we had a question. Teníamos una pregunta en portugués. Aline y yo no hablo bien portugués. A Sydney, entonces Sydney primero y después Carol tiene una pregunta en el chat. Sydney, adelante.
Sí, muchas gracias, Simone. Perdón que voy a hablar español en esta sesión trilingüe. Yo estoy de acuerdo con las intervenciones de Tom y Felipe en cuanto que tener varios aplicativos creo que realmente no crea mucho ruido, ¿no? Como se piensa, ¿no? Porque además es un campo para la innovación, ¿no? Sabemos que este es un mundo que cambia constantemente. Hace unos días lanzaron a Landsat 9, entonces la frecuencia de información que vamos a tener cada vez va a ir en aumento, ¿no? Entonces, el desarrollo de aplicativos me parece bueno desde esa perspectiva, porque abre los caminos a la innovación y obviamente siempre a la mejora, ¿no? Pero creo que ese es un tema que está ya casi bastante solucionado, ¿no? Incluso mostraron métodos de cómo sacar adelante el desafío de la conectividad, ¿no? Más bien mi comentario, pregunta iba hacia cómo están lidiando con esta otra fase luego de que se obtiene la información, ¿no? Porque muchas autoridades de gobierno, en especial las de orden de fiscalización, requieren, ¿no? que parte de esta información tenga algún tipo de validez de parte del mismo gobierno, ¿no? Entonces, y muchos de estos aplicativos son, digamos, desarrollados por sociedad civil, academia. Entonces, ¿cómo se está lidiando con esa situación en esta otra fase, ¿no? Que sería ya el accionar con las autoridades? Gracias.
Gracias, Sidney. Sidney es director de Sistemas de Información Geográfica en ACA, que es nuestro socio principal en Perú. Gracias, Sidney. Sophie nos hizo la traducción de la pregunta y después vamos a cerrar esa sesión. Aline, would you say that the objective of Terra Track is more towards traceability and productive value change? Do you expect it to be a showcase of products?
Well, just first talking about what was said about moderation. The app will have some levels of users with different permissions. Any user can create alerts, but just registered people from support institutions or managers of areas of interest can validate the alerts. So we hope that this could help with local institutions about the moderation. And about the question of chat, in this moment, Terra Track is more about threats in the environmental territory. So it is to create alerts about possible disturbances in territories. But one community that we are consulting, that was a community of women that are extractivists, said us that is very nice if they could track their collects and monitor stock of products in the forest. So we are thinking now in how to customize the tool to attend this demand too. But now in this moment, Terra Track is mainly focused on create alerts of threats.